Welcome, everyone. This is Jim Spohr from ISSIP, the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals, and it's my pleasure today to have this opportunity to learn more about the Detroit Trees project, which is the Impact to Society 2023 award winner for ISSIP Excellence in Service Innovation. It's a real pleasure now to just share briefly this one slide that I want to share before turning it over to the team of that won the award. This is the ISSIP certificate about the innovation d.Tree, Detroit Tree Studio, 3 trees, 2 institutions, and 12 makers. We have Leslie Tom and Ian Lambert, and also Akeem Salmon on the call today. So I'll turn it over to you, Leslie. I'll stop sharing and let you take it from here.
Great, thanks, Jim. And it's nice to see you again. I know I met you when I was at Berkeley taking service design classes. So with my professor, Robert Glushko, who, fun fact, got to name the book, The Discipline of Organizing with him. So let me share my screen and then start this presentation. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Oops. There. Okay, great. So this project is called the d.Tree Studio Project. Our tagline is 2 institutions, 3 makers, 3 trees, and 12 makers. And we're going to describe a little bit about our curriculum and our co-design for sustainability, climate justice, and African-American material culture. So just to present a little bit of my colleagues here, my collaborators, we kind of define ourselves as climate designers, and I feel like we want to inspire more and more people to think about putting the environment and Mother Nature first. I'm Leslie Tom. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit. My background is in architecture and a master's in information management systems from UC Berkeley and at the iSchool. And I just am sort of have my dream job here at the museum, where I can think about visitor, staff, vendor, staff, volunteer experiences. And this project here, the d.Tree, really kind of tied a lot of my interests together. And I'm just so passionate to be able to be at a museum, at an African-American museum in Detroit, the 2nd largest in the country, after the Smithsonian, and I'm just very grateful. So I'm going to pass it on to Akeem, and this is sort of like the Venn diagram here, where Akeem, so appreciative of Akeem and his brilliance. He has much information on how both of our institutions worked, and maybe he can talk a little bit more about that. But Akeem, you're on mute.
So, hi everyone. My name is Akeem Salmon. I am the Sustainability Research and Design Specialist at the Charles Wright Museum of African American History, and also I'm a 2020 graduate at the College for Creative Studies. So I've been in both pools of nurturing by both institutions, and being a part of this project has been just, I want to say, an energy of joy, seeing how both institutions are now able to collaborate. I'll pass it on to Ian.
Thank you, Akeem. Hi, I'm Ian Lambert. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies and Research at the College for Creative Studies, which is an independent art school here in Detroit. I have a background in sustainability and making us thinking. And I've lived in Detroit for 4 years.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Here we are. So the story about our d.Tree project started in 2018 when we were walking around our campus with our landscape architect and realized that some of these trees were dead and dying, some of our Zelkova trees. When they were planted here at our new museum in 1997, they were not planted correctly, and so the main root was starting to girdle them. And so this is why you can see the bark here was falling off and the leaves were curling. So we identified 3 different trees, and this diagram here to the right was Ian's sketch on how we could think about preserving some of the nodes and root structures, barks, leaves so that we can start to think about how to use it and divert it from landfill. So just to call out, if you ever come visit Detroit, we are neighboring institutions. We are part of the Cultural Center in Midtown Detroit. We can walk to each other's buildings. It's about, I don't know, 200 feet away, I suppose. And it's just so great. We're here. Supposedly, the campus here has the most cultural institutions, over 13 of museums, libraries, Wayne State University. So like the ability to all work together and synergistically improve our lives has like a very high potential. So this is sort of a model of how two institutions can start to work together. So I wanted to pause here and sort of say, really the way that this started working well was that Akeem really pulled together this meditation video. There was a lot of ideas and intentions with this project, and we're going to watch that video a little bit. So I'm going to pass it on to Akeem to play this video and speak of anything if you'd like.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen after. Okay, continue desktop 2. Okay. Oh, wait, let me ensure that I click share audio. Share screen. There we go. All right. So this is the meditation video that was made as the grounding principle of the project. As Leslie mentioned, there were so many ideas in regards to how we want to shape this project, and especially with all the partners and community members that were involved. This allowed us to start to think about how do we approach these 3 trees that are here in Detroit, and how do they reference all the trees that are here as a whole. So here is the film.
There is something magical about the trees of Detroit. These trees have much to teach us about respecting the wisdom of people, of place, of history. The relationship between people and trees has often been difficult here. From deforestation centuries ago to bankruptcy-fueled neglect more recently. But the destiny of people and trees remained entwined here in Detroit. The trees in our neighborhoods are sacred. They breathe out oxygen to keep us alive. They connect us to past humanity. Too often, we treat our trees as disposable. A city the size of Detroit is likely to remove between 10,000 to 20,000 trees per year due to natural causes like tree age and weather events, or for urban development. In the past, trees dominated the landscape, but now, after decades of exploitation and deforestation, the trees, the beavers, the buffaloes, all gave their lives to build cities, to be used and disposed of without respect. What if we decided not to mulch or throw these trees away, but find a way to extend their lives meaningfully? Various countries in Africa have a distinctive material culture where masks, drums, and sculptures hold stories. Wisdom is embedded and passed down through these objects and the stories they hold. Listen to the drum. It is an invitation, calling you to find a way to extend the lives and the stories of Detroit's trees.
I'm Neil Barclay, President and CEO of the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. As the Wright opens up to transforming trees by extending their life, we are extremely proud to be involved in the environmental sustainability space with CCS students. In collaboration with partners like the College for Creative Studies, our efforts are designed to educate and promote the importance of healthy communities.
The d.Tree Studio Project is a collaboration between CCS and the Wright Museum. The project seeks to respect and lengthen the lives of trees by co-creating a course experience for students and the community. In 2018, the Wright Museum found several dead and dying Zocova trees on their campus. Instead of mulching or adding the trees to the landfill, the Wright Museum reached out to CCS to try to find a way to use them sustainably.
Trees have much to say, and we really do need to listen. As the artist experiences this encounter, so does the tree. We wish the artist to listen to the tree, to be informed of its life, and to use that experience to extend the life of the tree. This requires humility and reverence. Join us on this journey. Attend our Treeposium Tuesday, September 21st, and our final exhibition in January 2022. Visit our website, d.Tree.me, for more information.
Thanks, Akeem.
There we have it. Right,
So
stop sharing.
that was our little video that Akeem helped to make, and it's really helped to shape the narrative and just ground everyone in this narrative of focusing on the trees. And we're going to finish the rest of our presentation in the next 10 minutes so we can have time for Q&A. But that video, every time we play it with a group of people, they emotions are evoked and they're put back in this place of what our intentions for this project were, and it just keeps building and growing. And so that video, if you want to see it again, you can see it at d.Tree.me, the website, or some of our other videos are on there. But all of this work and that video sort of just talked about the last exhibit opening in March of 2022. We're going to be opening up a new exhibit at the Wright Museum this summer in July. So all of this work was based on wanting to divert waste from landfill, using urban lumber as a resource. And some of these concepts are coming from our Detroit Sustainability Action Agenda, which Joel Hirani Harris had more than 6,800 people in Detroit contribute their voices to. So it was really easy for Ian and I to be able to work towards these kind of zero waste goals. So we wanted to declare that urban lumber is a resource in the city, and that this d.Tree studio is creating cultural and awareness for African relationship to trees, Native American relationships to trees, as well as the life cycle. So I'm going to pass this on to Ian.
Okay, as Leslie mentioned, we started out with this notion of trying to divert trees from either landfill or being turned into mulch. But as was stated in the film, Detroit removes between about 10 to 20,000 trees a year. That's a lot of lumber, a lot of urban lumber. Now, there are numerous urban lumber networks across the US that aim to divert urban lumber into a material cycle. But also it's important to note that in cities, trees do have a degree of agency. They sort of help to demarc socioeconomic spaces, and they sort of speak to an uneven distribution of well-being in cities as well. They have also in Detroit a real deep historical importance. They have deep roots in Detroit. And in many ways, the trees have witnessed things about the city with their deep roots here. Even before Detroit became Detroit hundreds of years ago, there is a history here that's so deep rooted. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we were in the project, we were also really trying to advance a narrative using sort of a community arts approach. So we had this material with the trees. We were able to mill it into usable lumber. And we really wanted to align the creative outcomes that the students were using to the mission of the Wright Museum and really foreground an African-American narrative in Detroit and a narrative that really spoke to social justice. But at the same time, we're looking at sustainability, we're looking at inclusivity, we're looking at climate justice. And we really also wanted to foreground this notion of storytelling through the objects. And that really came through in the student work. And at the same time, the students themselves were learning about the really deep and rich context of the project. And at the same time, learning some really quite advanced woodworking skills. A lot of the students came into this class with limited woodworking experience, and they were really able to develop that skill. And I'll go through that at a later stage in the presentation. So back to Leslie.
Thanks. So this project started in 2019, or in 2020 early. And we had a discussion about what trees were in cities and what the relationships were for trees were, thinking about climate awareness, how trees could be, we could be urban leaders, and then COVID happened. And that was actually a chance for us to really reevaluate what was important to this project and really get deep. And I'm so glad that we were able to start to use some of the service design methods to kind of unravel those different systems between an art and design school and an African-American museum, and what could be done well for each of these different institutions. So as a result of that, we grounded everything with this concept from Akeem's video of respecting the wisdom of people, place, and history. What a museum does well is convene people for conversations. And so we created this new sort of program called the Treeposium, which is a tree symposium. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We brought the students in to expose them to outside people's ideas and relationships and stories to trees. And then the students created these objects. So here's some more diagrams that we have of just, like swim lanes or journey maps of how we're going to actually get some of the work done. Here's some other diagrams of just us trying to figure out how we collaborate together, who is responsible for what. There's a lot of implementation within this project. There was a lot of different items that we pushed the boundaries for how we did things more justly. So, and to talk a little bit more about some of that stuff, we created these different frameworks through our conversations, and we just kept working to really understand what the essence of this project is. So it really kind of boils down to understanding the past, present, and future of the trees, how people respect the trees and what the trees can teach us from an African material culture and a tree experience as well as science. So some of the ways that we were innovative with pulling together this d.Tree project was through recruiting. We created these little seed packets and we handed them to artists, or we left them at different places. And we put in our request for students to be able to enter this class. CCS provided 7 different community scholarships. One of the things that we felt that was was when you live in a place for longer than 5 years, you start to learn about the space differently. And so that was one of the requirements, was to have people who lived in Detroit, Highland Park, or Hamtramck be able to enter the space for the students who might be a little bit more transient. So this is the Treeposium idea, where it was the Tree Symposium. We brought together landscape architects, Native American storytellers, African American storytellers, elders, and professors, academics, to be able to really talk and think about what these Detroit trees were thinking. We partnered with the UN Design Corps' Month of Design, and over 900 people were able to also experience these conversations in a very live way through Zoom during COVID, but it was really engaging. We were able to have all the panelists be able to facilitate things. And it was just sort of these touch points of understanding, how do you bring people into this project and how do you let them use their voice and experiences to touch the lives of others? I'm going to pass this back to Ian, who can describe a little bit more about the class.
Thank you, Leslie. There's so much to talk about here. I'm really conscious of the time, so I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit. But I think one of the things that Leslie's just described there is a process that probably arose because of the pandemic. You'll see in this picture, we're all wearing masks. And the process was delayed by a year, which gave rise to this really deep thinking. And I don't think I've ever taught a class with so much preparation in advance of it. But as we entered into the woodshop here, the students were really encouraged to sort of work with the material and really understand the properties of the material. So we were taking an approach where they were, it's what Tim Ingold calls morphogeneticism. It's where you're making in anticipation of what might emerge and where you follow the grain of the material. So we encourage them to sort of dive in and work with this and play with the material and understand its properties and qualities. But at the same time, we were infusing this rich and deep context, which we had established from beforehand, and also by bringing in a number of guest speakers who could talk about history, sort of artistic expression, and even sort of law and justice in this project, which really, I think, started to inspire the students to think more carefully through their projects. One of the most significant parts of the project, the next slide, please, was a visit to Dabble's African Bees Museum here in Detroit. Olemi Dabbles is he doesn't describe himself as an artist, but he's certainly a creative, and has this extensive, I'll call it a sculpture park, with these objects which are really have a deep narrative. When he gave the students the tour, it was incredibly inspiring to talk about the metaphor and the relationship between materials and storytelling, and how we got these really rich stories that really speak to decolonization and a sort of colonized history. Next slide, we entered into the wood shop, and you can see students are working with the materials. We have the wood drying in the CCS basement. And you can see here the students really getting to grips with their material outcomes. And over the course of about 15 weeks, the objects started to emerge. Now, we've only got time to talk about a couple of those. Next slide. This one is a decolonized chess set. The student that made it was a high school chess champion, and she sort of really changed the narrative of chess, where you have two opposing sides trying to vanquish one another, and turn this in where everybody looks inward. And the aim of this chess set is for each side to integrate and to collaborate and understand each other. She rewrote the rules for this. And this was just one of the really sort of inspiring pieces, where the students' outlook and mindset with this whole topic was completely transformed. Next slide. And this one was a really, really beautiful piece. It's an enlarged hairpick. And this student herself was a mother. She has a daughter, but she also became pregnant during the course of the project. And this speaks to the kind of the nurturing of a mother to daughter, which has a sort of a deep sort of African tradition of sort of nurturing through the hair, braiding hair, and it's a really sort of deep and tactile relationship between mother and daughter. And as she sort of cradled this in her hand in the final presentation, very visibly pregnant, it just looked like she was cradling a child. And the whole sort of way that this kind of unintended narrative emerged was just really, really beautiful. Now, we've got obviously 10 more artifacts that you can see on our website. We put this in the exhibition here in the Manugian Visual Resource Center here at CCS, in the center galleries inside this. This building itself used to house at one point for a few years the Wright Museum. So it was really appropriate to use this building. And we had this amazing exhibition, which not just foregrounded the artifacts and the work of the students, but we really wanted to show the process, the storytelling, the whole story of the project, and really give it its full context. And from this point, the project has now, in the year and a half, or the almost year and a half that's passed since that exhibition came down, there's been a lot of time for reflection. And I think that we're now sort of viewing the project slightly differently, with more depth. And it's moving into the Wright Museum, which I just think is absolutely wonderful, to actually elevate it to a world-class museum such as the Wright. There are also certain unintended outcomes as well, but I think the project really brought together the leadership teams of the two institutions for a more in-depth conversation. Etta, who I see is on the call now, was brought her neighbors from her senior housing complex to come and visit the show as well. We brought them along because of Etta, and we have sent a CCS bus along to bring them around the show. And also we had some media coverage too. Okay, let's hasten forward. So yes, as we said, the leadership teams came together, and now we have this sort of larger, sort of more high-profile exhibition here at the Wright.
Right. So I will take it on from here. So my role, especially in the aspect of design and research, is going with that same conversation of institutional silos versus community. So being able to think of what each institution would normally operate by itself versus making an effective community, similar to how trees communicate underground by sharing resources and essentially creating an ecosystem that everyone is able to thrive in an effective way. Next slide. So one of the things that I specifically am going to be focusing on is service design and its role on human decision-making, where we can look at curation as advocacy. So how are we able to take all this information and turn it into all these intersections that the public will be able to take action from? So this project, in hindsight, is over 5 years. They had the first iteration at CCS. Now we're having it at the Wright Museum. So we can do next slide. So one of the things that is at the foreground of this exhibit design is put in the context, but how are we designing this exhibition and being able to think about the low carbon usage in mind? So for instance, CCS, rather than using vinyl, which is very toxic for the environment, what we're doing, we are going to be making a large CNC cut of the logo, as well as the main titling of the exhibition, to be able to reduce those toxic materials, and being able to think of ways that we can strategically use hand-drawn, projected and hand-drawn aspects in order to convey illustrations versus taking the use of more vinyl. So these are some of the aspects that we kind of identified. Next slide. So again, curatorial practice, being able to think of the exhibition and its complexity, even understanding words like equity and urban lumber, where not everyone would at instant know the definition, but how do we guide an audience to understand all of the thinking process that went through this project? So we started to decide in the design aspect, how are we going to incorporate service design in the aspect of curation? So being able to ground the exhibition through the definitions, but also walk the audience through the past, present, and future. We can do next slide. So this is also another aspect with the modular wall, which talks about careers, just again, thinking of how we can influence others. We can do next slide. So as I mentioned before, talking about the pass wall, grounding all the information on research, we can go right into the next slide. And with the initial video that we saw opening this presentation, the idea of research comes right into the heart of this project, thinking about how are we doing context, how are we getting information from community members. So we had a listening session to grab that information. We can do next slide. and being able to weave that in such a seamless way. So thinking of the present section, highlighting even this award for this project, and this being an ongoing process. And then how do we think of the future? How are we able to think of the ways that the people of Detroit can take action? How do we utilize the trees to guide us? How do we break down these colonized preconception of knowledge and education? And how do we actually listen to our environment and the earth to guide our decision making? And this is one of the hearts of this exhibition. So in summary, really taking all these complex data, qualitative and quantitative, to be able to turn it into relatable and understandable content in the aspect of design and curation. So yeah, next slide. I think that should be it. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Akeem. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Ian. And thank you. I see Etta, who joined the call. I recognized you in that wonderful video. So inspiring. And on behalf of the ISSIP International Society of Service Innovation Professionals, congratulations again for your Impact Society Award. I see Deb Stokes from our leadership team. She's our VP this year, our president next year. She's on. I saw your comments as well, Deb, in the channel. We are over. I can stay on. I realize some people have to leave, but if there are any questions or comments, I just think this is a wonderful project. I'm so glad the awards committee selected it. So glad, Leslie, you took the initiative to submit it. It is just a jewel. I visited Detroit in the past. I had an aunt that lived there, so I could say so much. I guess my one question is, today in Detroit, I know the air quality is bad because of trees burning in Canada. And I'm just wondering, as you think about that, I mean, today is the day the air quality is so bad. And I'm just wondering if, you know, as you think about the history of all of this, do you have any thoughts about that? Is there a way to weave that into this narrative as well, that that things are going on in the world?
Yeah, that's what's so amazing about this project, is that when we focus on the trees, it's almost like the trees are a stakeholder for us. And when we listen to the trees, new discoveries of community, of resiliency, of action come forward. And I just wanted to shout out that, like, Michigan State University are planting fruit trees right now. They have a huge grant. And the city of Detroit with American Forest and DTE are also planting 75,000 trees over the next 5 years. So just to see how this project can fit in to providing new lenses, cultural lenses, life cycle lenses for all of these tree plantings, and understanding the entire biomimicry sort of cycle of trees is like very special.
Maybe that's a call to action. If you love this project, go plant a tree.
I love it.
Thank you. Yeah. Ian or Akeem, any other thoughts?
Well, I
Thanks.
think that the wildfires in Ontario just show us that the climate crisis is real. I mean, it's, you know, it's there, and it affects all of us in many different ways. So, you know, it's another sort of poignant example of why we need to act.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I live in California where we've had wildfires, and two of the biggest insurance companies just said they're not going to insure houses anymore here because of the potential damage. So there's real socioeconomic impact for that. You know, house buyers, house sellers, all of that is affected when you can't get fire insurance because of the hazards. Yeah, Akeem, any thought? I love your, you know, editor director of that amazing video. Congratulations. Such an accomplishment for someone so young. But it's beautiful. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think this project in itself is just a wonderful experience, and the idea of intergenerational conversations, between past, present, but even like you said, me being so young and being able to be a part of the process. And I think even the idea of all the community members that had the opportunity to be get that scholarship to make these sculptures contribute. So it's like one of those exciting moments where how are we able to look to the future, and what does the future of the earth looks like, and creating solutions is creating more spaces that have these cross-sectional conversations versus, again, those institutional silos, I'd say like people silos, but being able to have a more holistic approach on how we are going to care for our collective future.
Fantastic. Let's open it up to anyone else on the call. Please do come off mute if you want to come off, have a comment. This is the opportunity. Well, thank you all for joining. I'll go ahead and get this recording probably tomorrow posted to our ISSIP YouTube along with the slides. Thanks for sharing those, Leslie, Akeem, and Ian. I got those now. So I'll get that posted. I'll send out a note to the ISSIP community. And thank you so much again, and congratulations again. And it's wonderful that the ISSIP Award will be in your Wright Museum Center there. So happy about that.
Yes,
I'll
thank
share
you.
that with the ISSIP leadership team on our next call. Very cool. Wonderful project. Thank you so much for sharing. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.